Hopefully it'll be better than last time. Let me set it down here. And our topic tonight will be about backing up your phone. Um, it's actually quite an important topic for a couple of reasons. Reason number one is if you are like a typical normie user of a phone, what you do is you put everything you own, every piece of information that belongs to you, put it on the phone. Every photograph in your life you actually transfer to the phone. So I've seen like friends of mine who are older, and they will put their old pictures on there so that they can go in a social event and go flip and say, "Here's my photo from long ago." And it's such a bad idea to do that because, for one, you're actually risking so much by putting all your data onto the phone because the phone is portable. I mean, a phone is not the safest place for data, regardless of all the security promises made by Apple and Google. It's not the safest place. And the other thing is, especially on Apple's side, client-side scanning can scan your photos for content, and even innocent photos might be scanned and be miscategorized. So my personal style, and this is just me, and if you're privacy conscious, you can take a hint from what I do. Uh, I don't put a lot of stuff in my phone. My phone will have like current photos, recent photos, and then I back it up, and I tend to purge the photos from the phone so that if it's a little beyond recent, I would move it to a different storage, and that's what we'll talk about. And by doing that, I don't really fear my phone getting lost, stolen, or breaking. Some of you have actually contacted me, even recently here, where you lost your phone data. Perhaps a typical one is you broke the screen. So you broke the screen of your device, and so you can't see if it's turned on or not, and you can't access your data, and now you don't have a way of restoring it. And people have asked me, can I get a screen replacement just for the purpose of restoring the data, and then they can dump the screen. So even a broken screen for them is useful for this because they want to just be able to log in to the phone. So I want to prevent that. So what I'm actually going to tell you about is how to get into the situation where you're not in that position where you lose everything and you're left hopeless in the common event of breaking your phone. I mean, it's pretty common. I mean, what percentage of people break their phone? 20%? It's a pretty high number. So if 20% of people break their phone, that means you have a 20% chance of losing your zucking data completely, because you never thought about backing it up. So, and some of you are beginners, you don't know how to do it, and you don't even know which things to back up, and so we'll get into that. And fortunately, I have videos on some backup solutions that we will discuss. You can use some of them. You don't have to rely on that. There's other ways of backing up just manually. You can even do it just manually without any kind of software. And we'll start with that first. So, if you have an iPhone, we don't like talking about iPhones because they're such privacy stealing devices. But let's say you have an iPhone. Actually, iPhones, you don't have to do much of anything. You just plug it in to your computer with a USB cable and log in. You have to log into the phone. Log into the phone, plug it in with a USB cable, and go to your file manager on whatever operating system you're on, whether it be Mac or Windows, and you will see the drive for the phone. The phone will appear as a drive with internal storage on there. And then you'll be able to go in there and actually pull your photos, for example, from your phone. So that's easy. There's nothing you got to do. In fact, on an iPhone, as long as assuming the iPhone is charged, you plug in the cable, plug it into your computer. It's important that we have a computer in here in this process. You plug it into your computer, even if the screen is busted, it should be able to display the drive letter, and then you can copy your files over. You should practice now. Don't wait for the moment when your phone breaks. You should practice now and actually start downloading your files from the device. Now on an Android or even the Google phone, there's a few little tricks here. So on the Google phone, the issue is that the phone does not automatically allow USB file transfer mode. So that's when the phone is able to present itself as a drive. And most of you, that's not set up. Now in the past, that was semi-dangerous because in past versions of Android, you didn't have to be logged in. If you enabled USB file transfer and you plugged in your USB, somebody can actually see your files. So if you were charging your phone on some airport system, your files could be basically stolen from the phone directly. That's not true anymore. Nowadays, you have to be logged into the phone for it to appear as a drive. So if the phone is off and you're just charging, it's not going to do that. So it's actually okay on a newer Android and certainly on the Google phones like Brax 2 or the Google Pixels that we sell. It's actually okay to leave the USB file transfer mode enabled. Now, again, what does that mean? USB file transfer mode means if you plug in a USB cable to the computer will see it as a drive. And then you can manually just copy it. That's not enough though. You got to do a few more things here. So I'll get into that in a second. So again, do this now. Don't do this when you're in an emergency, like some of you. I must have had 5 people in the last 2 weeks have this event where they lost all their data because they were just not planning on this. Or sometimes it's our fault. We have an update that failed. There's been a few incidents of that, and then some people didn't have a backup. So yeah, it's especially if you're going to do an update, it's good to do a backup. So this is what you do. So I'm just going to run through the steps here. Unfortunately, I did not make a video of these steps that I will describe to you, but what you do is on Android. Now this is on Android. On Apple, you don't have to do anything. Just plug it in, log in. On the Google phone or standard Android, you go to System Settings. So Settings, System, Advanced. No, wrong. Correction. You got to go to About Phone in Settings. And then look for the thing that it says build number. The build number for the operating system. So in my case, it's in the bottom of this particular phone I have here. And then you tap on that build number 7 times. And then it will say you're now a developer. Okay? So that's kind of a special thing to get into developer mode. Development mode or developer mode. So that's the only basic thing you got to do. This is also the same check to see if your phone can be OEM unlocked, which is something I talk about in Pixel. So you tap on the build number 7 times and it says you're now in developer mode. Now, after that, what you do is you go to System Settings. This is, again, on all Androids. And you go to Advanced in Settings. And now you will see something called Developer Options. So let me see if I can show you that. I don't know if it'll focus though. Okay, Developer Options. Okay. So then you click on Developer Options and it will present another screen like this, and you have a lot to scroll over there. Just wait for it to focus there. Now you scroll down, you keep scrolling down, and it will you will see the thing that says default USB configuration. Default USB configuration right there in the middle. Then you tap on that, and there's the option file transfer. Okay, because normally it says no data transfer. The default is no data transfer, so you say file transfer. Okay, so now once you do that, then all you need to do from here on, and you might as well leave it like that, because let me tell you what happens. Let's say your screen breaks, your screen is cracked, you can't see the screen is black. It doesn't matter, as long as the phone has a charge, you can plug in the USB, you actually can have access to the drive, and then you can download photos and files. Okay, so you don't lose photos and files if you do this step. Okay, so that's the easy solution there. Now, some of you have a problem with recovering a phone or transferring data from phone to phone. This is the same procedure. If you want to transfer data from one phone to another, it's the same thing. You put them in USB mode, or if it's an iPhone, you don't have to put it in USB mode. Just plug in a USB cable, copy your stuff to a computer, and then copy it back to the device. Pretty simple stuff, except nobody knows how to do contacts. So yes, you can copy your files and photos directly. You look at internal storage and you'll see the camera folder, often called DCIM. So you will see that. So that doesn't take much figuring out. You just keep, clicking through the file tree, and then you'll see your photos. But where are your contacts? So this is something that many of you, the beginners, don't understand where your contacts are. So the contacts are actually, the best way to access it is just to go to the Contacts app on your phone. So on a Brax 2 phone or some such, you go to Contacts, and there will be an option on there to export. So I'll show you mine. There's an option to export. The bottom. Okay, now when you click on export, what it will do is create a file with the extension VCF. VCF. Now VCF is a standard contacts format that is recognized by all computers and all phones. So even if it's an iPhone, it can export in VCF. Anyone, any device, computer, any OS, even Linux, will recognize a VCF. A VCF actually is just, you can open it in a text editor like Notepad on Windows. It's just a text file with name on the first line, address on the second line, and all that. City, state, zip, phone number. It's pretty obvious when you look at it. And it's just a text file, comma delimited. Sorry, not comma delimited, but carriage return delimited at the end of every line. So that's what a VCF is. It's nothing. I mean, you can manually make a VCF file. It's not that complicated. Just follow the format. But what you do is you export your contacts every so often as a VCF file, because presumably if you break your screen, you may not be able to run an app. So what you do is you export the VCF file, just leave it on your file manager on your phone, and then you can then see it from your computer. So this will be the two important things you need to copy: your camera files, your photos, and then the contacts, which you hopefully will export every once in a while. Okay, every once in a while. You don't need to do it that often. Now, uh, this is the manual way of doing a backup, and for most people this is enough. There's no special procedure needed to do this. The problem is family. So you got people in your family who are not very techy. Let's say your wife is not very techy and doesn't want to learn how to do a backup and doesn't want to have to plug in a computer and do all that, and you want to figure it out. You want to figure out how to do this. So now let's get into the automated ways of doing this. And there are a couple of automated ways I'm going to suggest to you, which I have 2 videos on. And the first one is called SyncThing. SyncThing will basically back up your device wherever SyncThing is installed. You back up a designated folder. So let's say you back up your cameras folder, and then you can back it up on any device on your network where SyncThing is also installed. So SyncThing is a free app. You don't need to pay for it. SyncThing is an app on the phone. SyncThing can be downloaded on Windows and Mac OS. It basically is on Linux. It's available on every platform. So you install SyncThing on, I believe SyncThing is on F-Droid on the Google phone. There may be a SyncThing on a Google Play Store. I don't know. I used the one on F-Droid. And then there's SyncThing on the SyncThing website. And SyncThing is free and open source. And then what you do is every time you're on a home network, you can set it to actually automatically do a backup on some frequency, let's say nightly, and have it just back up your photos folder, and including the area where the VCF file might be, right? So by doing that, then you back it up to another device. So what is the other device? In this case, maybe it's a computer at your house. So you back it up to a computer. That's, as long as or you can back it up to multiple computers. That's the thing about SyncThing. You don't have to just back it up to one. So this is not an option that costs any money at all. It's pretty much free. So it doesn't cost anything. Yes, you can back up your photos to another phone, but that kind of defeats the purpose. You want to back up to a device that is not portable. So if 20% of the phones get damaged, then why would you risk that? I mean, you don't want to have a risk of you back up your data to another phone, and then that phone you forget to back up, and then you lose all your data. So yeah, back it up to a computer hard drive, and that would be better. So SyncThing is free, and again, what you're doing is you all register as devices, and then you can find each other as a SyncThing device, and then you say, I'm going to copy this folder to that device and under whatever folder on that device. So that's the basic. And you can watch my video. I have a video on SyncThing. I don't have to explain to you how it works here. Just, download that. Now, the most robust solution, and it actually is not that expensive. It costs a little bit more money. Now, this one is not a free solution. But it's not really all that costly. But it has better automation. I found that it's pretty reliable, and I don't have to think about it. There's some cases where it didn't work flawlessly, and I'll explain that. But the nice thing about the next option, which is Synology, is that it works over the internet very well. So over the internet, you can actually, you don't even have to be home. You take a photo, and your phone will just passively upload your photos to the server even if you're not home. So you're on vacation. It could theoretically, um, you can tell it not to do that, not to take data, but assuming you allowed it to do it, then it can actually back up your photos uh, on the fly, even while you're on vacation this summer. So, um, and the advantage of that is, of course, if you delete your photos for whatever reason, you have a copy of it on the Synology server. Now, Synology requires an actual Synology server unit, which is, there's small ones. The small one is only this big, and then, gets to be this big as well. And they're pretty cheap. The like a starting one is like, I don't know, 100 some dollars. And I got a big one. I got a big one for 200 some dollars. Except, yeah, that's the right spelling for Synology. Of course, I have a video on Synology, so you don't have to remember that. Just go watch the recent video. It's not that old. The video is this year. Now, the thing about Synology is, again, it's not that expensive. Mine is a bit more expensive. Actually, I did get the Synology one for free because Synology was a sponsor. They gave me, well, they're not much of a sponsor. The unit is only 200 and some dollars. Okay, so but they gave it to me, and I didn't have to make any promises to them about anything. I just used it, and I used it because I liked it. I didn't use it for the sponsorship, but they did give me the Synology, but I had to buy my own drives. Now, I bought some pretty hefty drives. I bought 12 terabytes, a pair. I bought a pair of 12 terabyte drives. Pretty overkill for most people. You can buy, a single 2 terabyte drive, solid state, or you can get a couple of, SATA drives for 2 terabytes. That should be enough for most people. And, spend not that much, $150 maybe. Less, maybe $100. So for let's say you get a Synology drive for $120, $130. Get a 2 terabyte drive, just one, for $100. I mean, for $250, you have a pretty robust backup, which you can expand at any time and add more, and which you can access over the internet on any device. And you don't even need a computer. Now, that's the advantage of a Synology option. You do not need a computer. You can do everything from your phone to Synology. So, yes, mine is more expensive. Whatever expensive means in this case is really just I spent. If I had to pay for the drive, like a normal person, that would have been like, with the hard drives included, would have been about $500. Again, not terribly scary for 12 terabytes. That's 12 terabyte backup. So I could have easily done it for $300. But I said, well, if I'm going to do this, might as well go the largest drive I can find for a reasonable price. And I went with 12 terabytes because then I can upload my videos, which, my backing up my YouTube video. So I did that, and lots of space. So the thing, though, that is nice is that it's automated. I don't really have to think about it. And the other thing is I have backed up every phone in my household using Synology, and it backs up to its own folder on the Synology drive server. So everyone is kind of independent, and then nobody has to think about it as long as they're on a network that can access the internet. They can access the drive, and then the updates will be automatic. And you can kind of check on Synology to make sure that it is in fact backing up. It's not, then maybe somebody reset their phone or something, and you can repeat the process again. My video explains how to do it. It's not the simplest. There are a few steps, you know, because depending on the phone, you need a different app to do it. Uh, the one I used for automation is an app on Synology called Synology Drive. That's the actual name of the app, Drive. So yeah, so I have Synology Drive, and in fact, the name of the app is Drive, and I have it installed on mine. And you can set it to download to synchronize a specific folder, or or you can synchronize just photos. So it's best to just, you know, sync the entire files folder in case you have files on there. So that is so that's kind of like the sequence of events here, from a free backup to something more automated. And the first two options are completely free. The manual method is, you know, for a single person is all you need. I mean, seriously, just remember to do it on, you know, on some regular basis. But even just plugging in the USB and downloading it is okay. Now, what you've learned here is that if you actually plan this out and do exactly what I said, if you ever break your screen, it should be possible just to turn on your phone and imagine that the screen is on, plug in the USB cable. Now it will ask you to log in, which is kind of a challenge if you can't see the screen, right? So that's my only concern is, you know, can you log in without the screen? So I would suggest that you put a fingerprint login on your or Face ID, whichever one you want, on your device, and that way you don't have to actually touch it. And then all you have to do then is plug in the USB, and then you can download your files. Okay. I know that's biometrics, and I know some of you don't want to do that, and don't worry about that. That is just fine, which is explained in the next video. So yes, again, just to remind you again what the procedure is, make sure your phone is able to do, assuming you're not doing automated backup, which is really the easiest. If you're not doing automated backup using a Synology or SyncThing, the procedure is to enable file transfer mode on USB on Android. It's automatically enabled on an iPhone. Set your phone to be logging in using Face ID or fingerprint. That way, if you break the screen and you plug in your USB, then you'll still be able to see your files. Okay, so let's face it, most of the damage on a phone is either you break the screen, which is highest proportion, or you leave it in the wash, which case you can't recover it. So the safest solution is obviously the automated backup. If you don't have the automated backup, and you just broke your screen, at least there's some way to recover. But let's not get into that situation. If you do regular backups of your devices, then you're not even going to be in the situation. So do not put all of your data, do not trust that all of your data should be on the phone. It's such a bad idea. Bad idea. So some of you are very cavalier with this and just ignore it. So don't do that. Be very, very careful with your data. Don't put that much data on a phone. So there we go. That's our short topic for tonight. Now, I didn't ask if the volume was okay. Is my volume good here? Let me just look at the comments, give you a few seconds to react here. Is the volume okay? Did that turn out on the... Because now that I'm using a microphone here, it's not on a stand. Do not refuse the fingerprint. That's funny. Okay, so just somebody tell me if the volume is okay. Okay, loud and clear. Good. Okay, so now I can take my station break and let's talk about my sponsor. My sponsor is Linode. Linode, by the way, or Akamai Linode now, is currently my only sponsor. I get sponsor requests multiple times a day. There's a lot of them. Everyone in their yeah, everyone in their family talks to me and says, can you sponsor us? And this could be anything from health products to every kind of computer product imaginable. And somebody just offered me another sponsorship, and I looked at the product and I said, I don't know, I'm not feeling it. So if I'm not feeling it, I don't respond, and I don't support it. Interestingly enough, I've been supporting Linode for a couple of over 2 years now, 2.5 years, and it's has been such an amazing partnership because I'm not afraid to recommend Linode because Linode is actually a very good cloud provider. It has the cheapest price that I've seen, especially if you include bandwidth, and they have such a good service that you wonder why would you go to AWS or GoDaddy or any one of these options. Here are the one thing that Linode is an expert at is Linux servers. So since most servers are Linux, including those running websites running WordPress, I don't know why you would seek any other expertise other than Linux servers. And Linode has so many good people in there who really know Linux very, very well. And they even provide pre-made servers for things like WordPress. You don't even have to install WordPress. You just select it on the menu, and you can pay as little as $5 a month, and you can pick a server already pre-installed with WordPress, and you don't even have to know anything about programming, and you can do that. The only thing you need help on maybe is setting up the domain. That's probably the trickiest part of this, and you have a bit of reading up to do. But anyone with some reasonable skills in tech can do all that. And for $5 a month, you can run a website. That's your own website that you control. So this is such a good option. So, and then you can expand if you get busier. You can expand it to $20 a month, and then you can have a higher capacity one. So highly recommended. If you go to Linode and sign up with the code linode.com/Rob Braxman, they will give you $100, which you can apply in the first 60 days for credit. So whatever you do could be free for 2 months, not to exceed $100. So there you go. Consider Linode. Okay. Let me see what other questions you have here. By the way, kind of a interesting event here. Kevin Mitnick died. Kevin Mitnick, if you don't know, is the well-known hacker who hacked phones and hacked the phone system like AT&T and so on. And he's been hiding for so many years, and I didn't know he was. I thought he was older. He's because most of the hacks were done in the 80s, so I thought he was older, and it turns out that he was only 59 when he died. And which surprised me because somebody was hacking in the 80s. That must mean must have been really young. So when he was finally arrested in when was that? Was it early 2000s maybe? I'm trying to remember. He was finally found and arrested. They actually charged him with multiple crimes of relating to phones, like fooling around with IMSIs. We can change the IMEI of a phone, but we can't change the IMSI. So he changed IMSIs on the phones in order to get free service and free and anonymous service. So the government was charging him per incident, and I think they charged him with, 50 years of imprisonment for all the IMSIs that he supposedly stole, and he likes to play around. The thing about Kevin Mitnick, he didn't do hacking to hurt anyone. It's almost like a compunction for him to do it. He couldn't help himself. And Kevin Mitnick was from L.A. He was from the valley part of L.A. And anyway, yeah, he was found in the East Coast somewhere. Trying to remember, Tennessee or North Carolina or somewhere over there, and they found him with a different name, and when he was arrested, and I told you they were hitting him with 50 years of prison. He actually got five years. So he was put in prison in California in a low security prison in Northern California somewhere, where white collar criminals were kept, and he at least in his book he thought it was pretty easy 5 years. So and then he every money he'd made had to pay back to the government a certain amount. I think he had to pay back 50,000. I can't remember the amount. And anyway, so he came out of prison after 5 years, which was not a long time, considering he was hiding for, I don't know, he was hiding for what, probably 20 years, and he became a cybersecurity consultant. So from hacker in jail, he came out and became a white hat hacker, and he was hired to do a lot of speeches about hacking and so on. So anyway, there's a lot to be learned. I did read his books, a couple of his books, and I would consider to be one of the experts on social engineering. So you remember that live stream I had a couple weeks ago about the social engineering hack where the student was basically scammed? Kevin Mitnick would have found that problem pretty quickly. He's very good at sensing people. Many of his hacks were actually combined with such a sophisticated social engineering or understanding of humans. He understood humans. I understand there's some of that in me as well. I mean, I understand human behavior. In fact, it's why there is so much difficulty with hiding your data on the internet. It's primarily because people like me can actually sense what you're going to do on the internet, how you're going to make a mistake, where you're going to hide it. Even I've made some of those mistakes, but unfortunately, the internet is not forgiving. So you make a mistake and you're discovered. In any case, there's a lot to be learned from Kevin Mitnick. Quite a character, and to die of pancreatic cancer at the age of 59 was a sad ending for him. And he certainly taught a lot of us, even me, some pretty informative things that can help us in the future. And And again, from reading his books, you get a sense that he, although he did illegal things constantly, which I don't do, he did all the time, and he liked doing it, but he never did it with the intent of causing harm. So yeah, I guess he stole phone services because basically he would go into AT&T and T and go into the office, switch his phone in there, turn it on, give himself free service, and yeah, that's a lot of what he did. A lot of it. One of the other things that he did, which was kind of interesting too, is an interesting story. He looked at death certificates because he wanted to take an identity. So he went to some state. I forget the state, um, but it was one of the smaller states. I don't know, like Montana, South Dakota, one of those. And he went to the library and or their hall of records or something, and basically found death certificates and used that then to pick an identity he was going to use uh, uh, to move forward, with a social security number and everything. And he used that and to move around for many many years with this alternate identity he created with a job, and he even created a job, paid taxes, and did all that. And then he uh, made a mistake, and then he got caught. So yeah, that's a crazy way to live. Very, very risky way to live. I it's not my preferred way, preferred lifestyle. He couldn't help himself. But at least people like me can learn from what he did and use it in a positive way and say, okay, what do bad guys actually want to do? Because here's a case where in theory Kevin Mitnick is the bad guy, and he's now telling us how he's doing it. So that now that's very useful information. And yeah, so he went. He did go to jail for that, and and he paid society, so to speak, with that. And given the supposed crimes that he did, it wasn't really that serious. It's mostly just stealing phone service. I don't remember the mistake. It's in the book. It's in his book. But yeah, you can learn some of his books. They're very interesting stories about his life, and it ends with his time, in prison. And then after that, how he turned it into a career where he started doing speeches and actually sold books. He has 3 or 4 books. I can't remember how many. I'd read at least two. So I know there was a third book. There may have been a fourth book. I can't remember. So yeah, it's certainly interesting to check out, and we can learn from that. Somebody's attempt to beat the system. This was before, social media was the way it is. So it's a little harder to do that now, I think. What he did was possible because, we didn't have Google and Apple compiling our data like they do now, and no Facebook. So yeah, this was pre-Facebook. So it's kind of scary now. I made a video which you guys can revisit, the Jason Bourne video. Go check that out, Jason Bourne video, and basically the scenario in the Jason Bourne video is somebody hiding from the government, kind of like Kevin Mitnick, and basically the conclusion is you're gonna get caught. That's the conclusion. You can hide for some amount of time, but it's pretty easy to make a mistake. You're gonna get caught. So I think it's more up to date than whatever Kevin Mitnick did. So if you watch that video, the Jason Bourne uh, game, called the Jason Bourne game, and you have to act like Jason Bourne, and then you'll see, how you have to look at it, what kind of phones you actually need to bring, and basically how to elude capture for a while. But the thing is, in case you think that I'm teaching you how to avoid the government or run from the government, I'm telling you right now, if the government's hunting you down, your chances of evading are close to nil. It's getting more impossible every day. It's close to nil for the long term. So yeah, you can hide for some short amount of time, but not gonna last. So, but it's a learning experience because the government isn't the only one that can hurt you. In fact, it's private parties that are at issue most of the time, like big tech or anyone wanting to censor us or control what we say or do. And we don't have a freedom to speak openly unless we have some sort of ability to hide our identity. Now, unfortunately, I will admit this to you, being a YouTuber like this for me is obviously exposed me to a lot of risk. So I have probably less chance than many to avoiding anything, because I'm sure if I go to the airport, I'm sure my face is flagged and comes up on all the screens in there, and they can identify me at all times, and with matching official government identities and driver's license and medical records and everything else. So I can't hide a lot of that because I made a choice here. My choice is to help you, and so I may have less data than most to risk, but I still have data to risk, and unfortunately there's no way to do that. There are always bad guys trying to hurt me, and there's always bad guys trying to take my data, and big companies obviously hate me. So the big companies will obviously want to, dox me and do things like that because I'm speaking badly about them. So, it's not much of a stretch to think that I could be a target. I'm less of an important target for government, and I don't really do anything on the government side. But my focus has mostly been on big tech, and and I've had threats in the past from some big tech companies. Fortunately, the one that I remember clearly was broken up. So one of the companies that I spoke about, and often I wouldn't reveal the name of the company because you just want to lay low a little bit because I'm in a kind of a dangerous field here. So and honestly, I don't feel that kind of threat from Google or Facebook or even Apple. But some other companies are more scary. They have more scary intent. So, and fortunately, like I said, the one that I thought was the most dangerous company got basically broken up into little pieces. They're no longer. In fact, the original name of the company is no longer used, and I had many names for them. The Love Lock, the Blue Suit People. Some of you remember that. right? Lovelock, the blue suit people. What's the other one? The something name company. Yeah. Romantic. There you go. Romantic. Yeah. Yes. So that company no longer exists. So that is no longer the name of their company. So, because it's a rotten company. Rotten company with very bad people. So, yeah. And, yeah. And I expose them because they're this is where it's blatant evil. Like things like breaking encryption using schemes like distributing fake certificates. I mean, truly, like something Google is not going to do. Google may have evil things in mind, but not that kind of evil. This is like total, obvious stuff. Like if you break encryption, then you can capture data from banking. That kind of bad kind of moves. So yeah, Google can do many things, but at least they're not trying to go take your financial data and then capture that. That's not their thing. So anyway, this was such a sidetrack, right? I went from Kevin Mitnick to that. So yeah, if you want to entertain yourself, you should consider reading some of those books from Kevin Mitnick. It's almost a historical moment, and many hackers from that time in the 2000s became FBI employees. Very interesting. They became FBI employees. So, and then some of them were used to attack other hackers. Like certain ones were used to attack people from Anonymous. So, one group, they threaten them and say, "Okay, we're gonna arrest you, but if you go work for us, then we're gonna be nice to you, but you gotta help us capture this other guy," and stuff like that. So yeah, some interesting historical stuff in there. And Kevin Mitnick was one of the early ones where they turned him to work for them. So that was pretty interesting. Okay, MySpace started it all. Okay, so what else? What else do we have being asked here? There is a Lovelock City. There's actually Lovelock City. That's funny. Morton Salt. Yeah, the Morton Salt Company. Yeah, some of you remember that. Romantic Morton Salt. What is the something naming company? That's the one that the very true something company. The very true naming company or something like that, which doesn't exist either anymore. Yeah. So for what it's worth, I don't do anything questionable on my phone. Angelo doesn't do anything questionable on his phone. Okay. How important is to update your phone operating system and apps? Because I always read how they wish they didn't update. There are security updates that relate to some serious invasions. Mostly I've heard them on iPhones. I don't actually recall anything recent in the last few years that would pose a specific and unique danger to Androids. So the one that Apple tried to fix was the Pegasus attack, which they didn't really fix it per se, but they've been doing all these updates to try to make it more difficult to do Pegasus. Not sure they've solved it. And what they did was go into what did it call that mode? The lockdown mode. So on Apple, they couldn't solve it, so they created this lockdown mode. And if you're saying, wow, Apple is so sophisticated, it came up with a lockdown mode. Well, you can do lockdown mode on any device, even your own computer, and emulate what Apple did. And you can do the same on your Android. And what they did is simply not accept any attachment in messages, in mail. You just don't open any attachment ever, which is something I always do anyway. I do not open attachments, so therefore by default I'm in lockdown mode. So what is Babs Jr. asking? Yeah, so if you just came in, is there a way to go Linux on a Brax phone? Possibly on a future Brax phone, yes, possibly. We're talking about it. Yeah. Mainly to support certain communities, but honestly, the best operating systems on a phone are Android based, not Linux. And this is actually a very, very good question. And I was going to make a video on this, but not sure it's going to get a lot of views because many people don't understand Linux phones. So let me tell you why I think that Linux phones are going to be a problem for a long time. So as you know, there have been many projects that are making Linux phones. For example, the Pine phone allows, multiple operating systems to run on multiple Linux distros to run on a Pine phone. And there are just so many different things about a phone that Android and iPhones and Apple have that standard device manufacturers just are not up to snuff yet on. One example of that is called the Secure Enclave. So Apple has the Secure Enclave with the security chip on iPhone, and you have something similar on an Android. And that allows you to keep your fingerprints, your Face ID and all that at the phone level only. And that allows a certain security, allows automatic encryption. The encryption is at the device level, and you can't just go boot the device and break the encryption. Well, because there's no such feature on a Linux device, they don't have this all built in, where in an iPhone, that data is actually kept in a separate chip. There's a separate security chip on a modern phone. When they do Linux, they can't take advantage of that because that's not part of Linux. So that's an example of an issue. So you have, if you have, like I have a Pine phone, I have a Librem 5, which hardly works, and you try to log in. Try logging into a Librem 5 is pretty crazy difficult. Because, it's like you have to have a bootloader, log in, and then you log into the UI or the user interface, and they get treated as separate things, and that's because that's how Linux works. So it's just not made to be a mobile OS. So that's one problem. The second problem is that the OS itself is not really made to take advantage of mobile. And one of the biggest problems with Linux operating systems is the power saving mode. If you run any kind of phone, an Android or an iPhone, they are very efficient. They hardly use any power when they're in standby mode. They're so efficient at it. In fact, if you have a de-Google phone, it's even more efficient. It's double the efficiency because you don't have all the Google things happening in the background. It's so efficient that a typical Android phone running de-Googled will have 2 days of power. 1 day on a standard Google phone, 2 days on a de-Google phone. And a Linux phone, you're lucky to get 5 hours. 5 hours. You're lucky. So, I mean, that's very impractical. In fact, if I charge my Librem 5, I don't even use it. It's just, I paid close to $800 for that thing. And I plug it in and it overheats. So you can't even leave it plugged in. You have to unplug it because it'll overheat. It doesn't even have a way of telling the hardware to shut down, because these are not things standard with Linux. So Linux doesn't have the makings of a mobile OS. So that's a problem until Linux itself has a mobile phone version that can take advantage of that. Then it's a problem. Now, how do they make Linux work on an Android phone? Because companies like Ubuntu Touch have made it so that they were able to make Ubuntu Touch, which is Linux, run on Android phones. And the way they do that is kind of a hack. The hack is that they run Linux by booting Android portions of the phone. So even though it's supposedly Linux, they're actually booting the OEM drivers on the phone, and then they're interfacing with those Android device drivers inside Linux. So the device drivers don't know that you're running Linux. They think you're running Android, and that's how they did that. And it's obviously not the most reliable way of doing that, and it's very hard to do. So that's why there's hardly any devices supported now. I remember some years back when I was selling Nexus 5 phones running Ubuntu Touch, and it was quite a good option back then. That was pre-de-Google phones, but they're not the best option. So my suggestion is we stick to de-Google phones. They're the best with that. They are running Android. They're for all intents and purposes, they're not detected to be a different phone. They're running something that's similar. The only thing that it disconnects it from is from talking to Google. So I personally only use de-Googled phones. Okay, so anyway, I don't have high hopes for Linux phones currently, unless they take advantage of the features of Android phones. So will they be able to do it on a Brax phone? Possibly, if we help them. If we provide the same tools and allow them to access the drivers indirectly, then it may be possible. Okay, so but if you're like holding back from buying a phone and saying I'm gonna wait for a Linux phone to come up, if you're a developer and you want to experiment, it's a good thing to do. But if you're an actual end user, no, you actually need to get a de-Google phone. You can't use an iPhone. Let's just be clear with that. You can't use an iPhone. The Google phones can be HDMI connected TV monitor. I have not tried. I've not tried that. So I don't know. I haven't tried it. Now, something that I didn't tell you in the backup portion, which I will tell you now, but I have not verified this. As you know, the Google phones are have USB-C connectors. So, and I did not know this. I've never tried it, but apparently, if you have a USB-C storage device, USB-C storage device, you can actually plug it in to a Brax 2 phone and be able to save your files to that. I was not aware of that. I've not tested that, and the dev said that can work. I've not tried it, so if some of you successfully tried that, let me know. The other way of doing storage on a phone like a Brax 2 that I did not mention is the Brax 2 has a slot for an SD card, so you can put a 128 gigabyte SD card on there, in which case you can store your data on the SD card. Then you don't need to worry about a backup so much because the SD card has all of your data. Okay, I didn't mention that, I forgot, but that's specific to our phones because our phones have SD cards. So normie phones don't have that. So, and then the second option is use USB-C storage, storage drives. Plug them into USB-C and see if you can do that. That one I haven't tested. The SD card, yes, I've tested that. That works. Right? Kevin Davis says, use Google tracking to track the politician. This actually worries me the most. And you make a comment lightly on that, but it's actually a fear of mine that, as you know, there is a public-private partnership that data from social media is actually being bought and collected by government agencies, primarily the three-letter agencies, and getting it from Google and Apple and Amazon and so on. So Google and Facebook. So they're taking your data and putting it into even larger databases. And they can pay for that data with the government, with these big companies, and they can make extra money on your data. Now, on top of that, then they have the way to track you with relationship maps, know who you called, who you texted, and so on, and track you using the CALEA law to see how your phone was used. Then they can go to the Google sensor vault and then track all of your locations. Now, this is the part that we never hear anything about, and it's really pretty scary, and that is they have the capability there to really find dirt on anyone. So politicians are dirty to begin with, right? Some of you are too naive and you don't think that. So if you don't think politicians are paid for influence, yeah, you're naive. You really have no idea how things work. Okay, so yeah, yes, politicians are paid for influence. I have personal knowledge of this, and now there are third parties involved so that it looks legit. So that, you donate to certain things, and it's seemingly indirect, and they're basically all crooks. to put it mildly. That's why I hate politics, because I don't really care what your side is. Chances are the politicians are all crooks. Yeah, some of you are very hardcore about supporting whoever it is you're supporting, but I still believe that most of them are pretty much crooks. So the problem is, then you got your three-letter agencies with their own crooked motives, and they say, well, you know what, we want to influence the election. They do this in other countries, by the way. It's a known thing. I mean, you look at historically how they've done that and tried to influence politicians in other countries, and the only question is, you don't think they do it here. Well, now they have the capability to find out everywhere you've been, what you've been doing, where your locations are, and it doesn't take a genius to be able to spot that some of these crooked politicians may actually be caught doing something bad. Okay, so if you get caught doing something bad, and then the party that got the data, let's say three-letter agency, hides that data and doesn't reveal it, they can't use it in court, but they can use it for influence, and they can say, well, we'll leak it to the press unless you take our side. This, folks, is the beginning of the corruption of the system. And I don't doubt that this is happening. This is, just as probably as common as doxing. I don't doubt that this is happening. There's no way to prove this unless you're an insider. I'm not an insider. I'm just saying the technology is there to do this. And since we're dealing with crooks to begin with, then let's admit it, crooks will do crooked things. And most people in politics are crooked. So yeah, you may hate me for saying that, but I'm unfortunately, I've known this for a long time. So I don't need to explain any more details other than I have personal experience with how this works, with lobbyists and so on. So I had my own company before, a large one. So, we had to deal with that. Sometimes you gotta get into channels to get into government contracts, which is one of the reasons I hate doing government contracts, because it's just so corrupt. So anyway, that's my fear. I know I just took a side comment there. From somebody making a comment about that, but I'm just saying that if government had data on everyone, then don't assume that data is meant for intelligence purposes. It can be used for influence and control. If they actually have some dirt on some politician and they can influence a vote, or stop something from coming to the attention of the public, they can do that. Which just shows you our weakness here. We are very weak, folks, and it's because we don't have any privacy, and these people don't have their privacy, even those politicians. Then it's very dangerous for all. Can Linux on tablet replace Android phone? Well, a tablet is not a phone. They all have different uses. You can use Linux on a tablet, but it's not a phone. But yeah, you can use it. Depends on what you're using it for, but it's not a phone. A phone is a phone. I'm a bit frustrated that libertarians seem to want a back currency. Do I need to get into economics for that? I suppose it's not the feature of my channel, so I don't need to get into that kind of discussion. So I don't I will leave that hanging then. Let me see what TechQ on Samsung phones. Is location settings the same equivalent to Jute? Is location settings location settings on all Android phones are the same. Didn't I just discuss it on the GPS video? What makes you think that Samsung phones are any different? They're Android phones. I have several location videos. Nothing about Samsung makes it any different unless it's ducking the Google. So all Android phones report 24/7 location to Google. They're not permission based. It goes from the Broadcom chip, Wi-Fi, GPS, location module, Bluetooth. They're all in one. It's in one chip, Broadcom chip on all of those phones, and they trigger that, and they're able to do Wi-Fi scanning and all those little tricks, and it's the code is actually embedded in the chip. They don't even have to write code for it, and then they can just take that data and send it to HQ. Somebody was asking me, what file? This is a question I was asked. Somebody asked it on my last video. What file is the GPS location stored in? So they think that you'll get it in a file. No, it's in the Zucking Broadcom chip. You don't need any Zucking file. It's in the Broadcom chip. It can manage it with its own memory. It's an SoC. It can handle its own data internally. So yeah, the Wi-Fi module, it's a separate SoC. It's an actual separate computer. So yeah, so it's to simplify it, and let's just run it down to the simplest core explanation. The only way to not have 24/7 location tracking is to not have a normie phone. What's a normie phone? Every Google Android is a normie phone. Every iPhone is a normie phone. What is not a normie phone? The Google phones, Brax 2s, Pixels running Calyx OS, that sort of thing. Pixels, Samsung running EOS. No, those are all the Google. They do not report location because that code isn't there. There is no code to extract the location Wi-Fi scanning from the Broadcom chip to send it to Google because there is no Google connection. That code has been stripped away. The other thing that's asked all the time, and it's so hard to explain, is what files can I change on a Google Android like a Samsung to make sure it's safe and doesn't talk to Google? You can't. Okay, the way they did that is there's the Android open source. That's what is published as open source. But the actual Android that's on your phone is not the Android open source. You can consider the Android open source was used by the manufacturers in testing only as part of their contract to indicate that they have a arrangement with Google to be calling themselves Android phones like Samsungs and HTCs and Motorola's and so on. They have to put in the replacement files called Google Apps into the phone, and what it does is replace the Android open source files with Google versions that have hidden proprietary code. We don't have source code for that. So they take an open source code, they add whatever telemetry code they want to add for Google, then they replace the file. So now you have this problem. How do you replace those replaced files to the original? Well, you can't. You can't because you got to basically replace everything because there are, in programming, they're called library dependencies. So if you take a file and it's doing a call, let's say that one of the modules for the Google Play Store is checking for Google Safety Net, and then it calls the module for Google Safety Net and it doesn't find it because you replaced the file, phone crashes. Can't do that. But the Google Safety Net features are not in Android open source, as an example. It's not any open source. They're not open source. They're proprietary. So because of that, it is impossible to take any Google phone and say, well, I know how to do this. I know how to be safe. I won't log into my Google phone. It's just an idiotic thing to do. I won't log in. I'll be safe. How are you safe doing that? It knows your IMI. It can identify your phone. Your phone is connected to Google and connected to Google with every app you log in. It doesn't matter if you haven't logged in. You've logged in once. It knows that. As if I believe that you're actually going to use your phone without logging in. So the temptation is there to log in because you're going to use YouTube and Gmail and all the other stuff. So you will log in eventually, in which case, then you've just lost the battle. So on the Google phone, there is no login. There is no chance to log in because there's no way to log in. There's no telemetry that connects to Google. Since the base source code used for the Google phone is the original Android open source. That's before Google added their proprietary code back in. So it doesn't have any proprietary code. How do we know there's no proprietary code? Because if they did, it would be in the open source. But it's not in the open source. And how do we, again, know that? Because we compile Android from Android open source, which we take the actual source code as published in android.org, and then you compile it independently, and then you come up with your own de-Googled version. Then you modify that, and you add more stuff. Okay, so that's how that works. That's how we know that a de-Googled Android or Android open source, or otherwise known as AOSP, is the very safest option today. Now, there are many kinds of AOSP products out there. Some people will shout to high heaven that theirs is more secure and better than others. And absent the hype, it's very simple. None of the Google stuff will be in existence on any AOSP or the Google operating system, on any version of it. So you can name me, all the different versions of AOSP, and as long as they don't put Google Apps on it, or GApps, or GApps, or however you want to call that, then you're good to go. It doesn't have any connection to Google. Somebody will say, well, we added this feature and that feature and all this, and even without any of that, I will be happily calling it a Google phone. So for example, I have used in the past Lineage OS. It's still very good. And nowadays I've been using Calyx OS, also very good. And on our phones we use Brax OS. So those are all okay. I'm not able to run my VPN on Starlink. I don't know why yet. It may be the MTU, something to do with the way the satellites work. It's incompatible with the size of the packet, my guess. So I don't use a VPN on Starlink. I don't need to. Starlink is already protecting my IP address. So if I have a problem with some site not wanting to use a VPN, I switch to Starlink. Kind of an expensive option, but I'm here testing tech stuff, so I already have Starlink. So when I use Starlink, I don't reveal my IP address because it uses IPv6. So the IPv4 that they see is shared by thousands of people, kind of like a VPN. So for me, Starlink is like, a poor man's VPN in a sense, although I say poor man's because Starlink is not cheap. Okay, so we're running out of time here. Again, the next video is going to talk about biometrics. This is very important to withhold your knee-jerk reactions about biometrics as long as you understand exactly how biometrics work. So that'll be in the next video. Okay? That'll be the next video, biometrics. So we got 5 minutes. Let me see if I can do some quickies in here. What are my thoughts on T-Mobile home internet? What makes T-Mobile internet different than any other internet? I'm sure it's the same as Verizon internet. Okay, so I use Spectrum and I use Starlink. So I got two. Uh, yeah, Spectrum is faster than Starlink. So, but it's a good backup. I need a backup way. One could become a poor man if they get Starlink. Yes, Starlink is expensive. It's much more expensive than DSL. Yeah. So, and that's for a fixed service, for a fixed location, and the bandwidth isn't all that hot. Yeah, I think you get 80 megabits per second on Starlink download. The problem, which is fine, no problem with that. The problem with Starlink is the upload is very unreliable. The upload speed is slow and unreliable. So I can't use it for live streaming. Unless I pay for the $250 one, the expensive version of it may be better. I have no idea. I'm not. Yeah, I'm not gonna go try that. Is it shaking right now? It's pretty steady. I don't notice any shaking here, but maybe you notice slight shaking because yeah, it's a boat. But it's nighttime, so not too many things are shaking at night. And it is open. My windows are open here on the boat because I can't run the air conditioner when I'm doing a broadcast. So yeah, it's it could be external noise. You can hear the helicopters and things outside. Does AOSP itself continue to be developed and updated regularly? Neil, what kind of question is that? AOSP is updated continuously by Google. Yes, I am on a boat. Yes, this is I do the broadcast on the other side of the boat. I'm on this side. So yeah, it's a good sized boat. So let me see. So AOSP to re-answer that question. AOSP is the basis for any new version of Android, so it's always being updated. Google has to update it in order to do the. So the way they do this is they update Android open source and then they merge it with their proprietary code, but it's still based primarily on the functionality of the open source. For this reason, the Android open source, which has many contributors, not just Google, every company contributes to it. That's part of the Android ecosystem. It's heavily updated. It's as updated as iOS is, probably even more. Okay, so thank you guys. We're out of time, and I will see you next time. And what Linux distro do you use? I use Pop! OS. So that's the one I use in my computers. I have several ones that are using Pop! OS. Okay, guys, thank you very much for watching. And yeah, go check out Kevin Mitnick's books. See if you can appreciate that story.